So here we are. Midnight, Saturday night, October 6th, 25th anniversary UFC, and this is what we got. Let's talk about it. Where do we start? With the fight or the fight? Or the fight?
We start with the fight. Let's get the fight out of the way to discuss what really matters.
So, in the fourth round, Khabib Nurmagomedov choked with the modified rear naked choke, neck crank elements, Conor McGregor to defend his title at 155 pounds. It happened in the way that most people expected it might happen. Khabib was very successful, taking Conor down from the very first round, scored several takedowns. Conor impressively was able to defend on the ground, neutralize submissions, defend against strikes, even get back to his feet occasionally, and in the rounds after, rounds 2 and 3, defend many of the takedowns and land some good strikes. Khabib landed a huge right hand at one point, which almost knocked Conor out. The fight continued, and then in the fourth round, Khabib persisted, got into his kind of high crotch single leg takedown, the one that he does so well, where he high crotches, then he trips the other foot using his foot, that foot sweep, puts Conor down, proceeds to get kind of a rear clinch position on Conor, because Conor's trying to avoid the takedown, gets kind of a rear clinch, stand up a little more like this, and then Khabib falls back, boom, and then they end up putting hooks in. Conor intelligently puts his back on the ground right here, beautifully defending. Khabib remounts, comes up, and ends up right here. He goes for an arm triangle. Conor swims inside, perfect defense. Khabib now has a double underhook control, tries this. Conor's kind of spreading his elbows apart from each other to avoid any kind of potential choke or threat. And then from here, eventually he comes up. Conor shrimp escapes, beautiful, push the hips, bring your knees both in front of my chest, does this, and you kind of land in this position here. Beautiful shrimp escape, kind of almost to an open guard. Couple strikes from here. Eventually, Khabib mounts again, and that's when Conor goes to his knees. Boom, he gets up. Khabib shoots the hand in, instantly locking his gable grip. They fall to the side against the cage right here. Boom, we'll just stay seated so you guys can see it. He locks this, more of a kneeling posture. Gable grip finish. Conor tucks his chin in, and Khabib just lets him have it. Full hip pressure, driving, ripping straight into his chin. There was even a little twisting element there, and we'll never know whether he tapped for more of the neck crank, which I don't think is very likely, or the fact that his chin was simply tucked and Conor squeezed straight through. Talk to us about that pressure.
Yeah, it's more than enough to make Conor tap.
It's almost like it chokes and it pushes your jaw into itself.
Yes, but you're tapping because of the choke. I don't think it was enough twist. I think Conor's a warrior, right? If he twists his neck, he's gonna resist.
Yes.
But when it comes to going to sleep, he doesn't want to go to sleep.
So it said neck crank on kind of the final decision of the submission there. I would beg to differ. I think Conor tapped because if he didn't, he would have passed unconscious from that choke. And anyone who's ever tried to defend a solid rear naked choke by tucking their chin knows that there is no defense against the rear naked choke with the chin tucked when someone is very determined from behind. And you know, that's the reality. And Khabib knew it. He probably catches this every day in practice. And are there defenses and things we can do from there? There are. But 4 rounds in, when you're exhausted and have been punched as many times as they both had, and have been taken down as many times, you know, everything changes. So this fight kind of panned out in the way that many, you know, especially Khabib fans, expected to. And then what proceeded after was something that we had never even seen, really. Well, first of all, about the defense. Yes.
Talking about this.
Yes.
And how the defense that mattered the most was that Herb Dean knew how to defend it.
Well, that was kind of interesting, right? Because the defense that would have happened, if any, right, is this idea of fighting the hands. Because when you have a gable grip locked in, here, let's just go on the side so we can make it easier to show. So we're here like this. The defense for this is in rear naked choke, when it's fully locked in, it's fight the top hand and pull it off. When it's gable grip, you reach up, you hook the thumb, and as you pry, the other hand can frame inside on your face, and then you slip your head out. Right? So the idea is to tack the hand that is hooked on top. And the challenge was, because Conor was posted up on both hands, he couldn't do that, right?
Yes.
And that's the challenge of getting choked from the turtle position or when you're posted up, is your hands are occupied by the attempt to get up. And in that attempt, your hands cannot also be used to fight the hands. But the way that we know this defense was not only the right defense, if there was going to be one in Conor's position, but also the effective and reliable one, is the second that Conor started tapping, Herb Dean went in and he hooked Khabib's thenar eminence. Like, pretend this is Herb Dean's hand, not Conor's. He grabbed it and plucked it 1 second, boom, and it popped off like that. It was actually very impressive from him. Not only to, because here's the thing, Khabib was not gonna let go of the submission. That's a fact. You guys saw it? Did you see it?
Well, they often say that you shouldn't let go, that the referee should stop
Until I touch you, you shouldn't let go.
Because there's no confusion. But it was a little extra.
But that's a good point. But I still think in UFC, wouldn't you say that when the guy taps and the guy's there is also like, yo, he's tapping right now. If you see, if they see the ref come in, you can kind of let go,
so
and
the
you know.
fighter knows.
Yeah, the fighter knows. We do this every day in the gym.
Agree.
So you know before I tap that I'm gonna tap. And here's the thing, Khabib had no intention of letting go of Conor's neck. And I think Herb knew this.
Correct, and you think that also.
I believe that, yeah. I really believe.
We don't know, maybe he was gonna let go right after Herb.
I believe with how hard, how precisely and how effectively Herb had to unlatch the choke to get free Conor's neck, that this was the reality. And this is so true that I'm happy, because in an earlier round, Khabib caught Conor in a kimura. He locked the double wrist grab on a kimura. It was very deliberate. It's when he landed inside the half guard, he came around the corner, he locked his hands, he had the kimura for a moment, and then Conor sat up and was able to finagle his way out of the situation. In that moment, I was thinking, oh my gosh. I wasn't just scared for Conor getting tapped right there, right, in terms of, like, you know, losing the fight. I was worried that if Khabib locked it, that he would rip through the arm and it would be a permanent injury to Conor's arm. I was more concerned about that. Forget who wins the fight. Conor's arm is about to get mangled right now because Khabib will not, in my opinion, was not gonna go to squeeze just to apply pressure. And listen, these are assumptions to some degree, but they're almost validated by the antics after the fight. And that's what we want to talk to you guys about. For those who didn't see it,
winning wasn't enough for Khabib.
Yes.
It wasn't enough, he wanted more.
And here's what we don't know. The build up to the fight, right? All the trash talking, all the hype before a fight, you know, it's interesting to see because you don't ever really know how much of it was hype and how much of it was real until after the fight. And sometimes the hype for one person is real for the other person. Or vice versa. And sometimes the hype is real for both. They're all just trying to make money. Other times, the deep animosity is real for both people. And in this case, we don't know for Conor how much of, what percentage, because we've seen him build fights like no other, right? There is no greater showman in MMA than Conor McGregor. We've seen him build fights incredibly well, and then after the fight, have respect, and it's all good. They shake hands, it was a tough competitor, boom, and they go on. And some of the things he said before the fight would have been perceived as unforgivable by anyone. And in this case,
if he would have won the fight,
we would have been able to see what percentage was Conor talking to build a fight and get paid, which he's gonna get paid no matter what, and what percentage was it.
And even after having lost the fight, we would have seen a lot. But the fact that this all went down,
we would have seen a lot.
Now we're even going to see something different. Now, supposedly, he's not going to press charges. Conor McGregor's not pressing charges.
We don't know anything. It's very soon to know anything.
I read that.
I see.
So that supposedly he told somebody that, he told Dana White that I read on Twitter quickly. The point is that says something right there. Yes. That Conor understands, even with all this chaos, because Conor himself is not innocent of doing things above and beyond.
That's true.
Crossing the line in terms of promoting.
Yeah, but I think that the general public and even the UFC as an organization, there's a line which is after the fight. The minute the fight is over, yo, that fight build is done. Everyone got paid. Everyone already watched. We already got their money. Now it's all good. Be sportsmen and move on. So when Khabib jumped up, got around the commission, the athletic commission employee, jumped over the cage and then attacked Dylan Dennis, Conor's jiu-jitsu coach, that's when it crossed the line. He jumped into the crowd, threw strikes, huge scramble, and then two of Khabib's or more friends jumped into the cage without permission and then attacked Conor, blindsided him, attacking him 3 or 4 punches from behind. Another guy attacked him from the front. And this fight is over, you know, and he already lost. And for this to have happened, it's sad because Conor lost the fight. Khabib lost the night. The UFC takes a step back in its credibility, right? The UFC takes a step back in its credibility, in its position as a credible sports organization, right? And the UFC fans lost respect for the engagement, the fight, the process, right? They're okay with the build-up, but when they see that after the fight, that's when they go, and this is not necessary. Shake hands after. Everyone likes to see that. Shake hands after and put it behind you and respect who you just fought.
I mean, we have to ask that question. Does everyone like to see that? Or do they all like to see guys fighting in the cage, jumping over the cage? Because, right?
Yeah.
I think what they really want is that respect and that appreciation and thank you for coming to the fight. But I feel like sometimes we get a little caught up and, you know, people fighting in the octagon, fighters jumping over, one fighter pushing the other, coming in. Like even the little DC Cormier and Brock Lesnar moment.
Yeah.
Like that's between two fighters. That's acceptable.
Well, it's acceptable because that's building up the next fight.
I understand.
Right?
My point was it was still after the fight,
That's
though.
true.
It's still DC's moment.
That's true.
And Brock pushed him.
Yeah.
So
I see.
It's, you know, so the thing is, it's almost like it's cool, but it's not cool.
Well, yeah, I'd see. Yeah,
Right?
it's tough.
So Conor McGregor is a smart guy. I mean, are they going to mention a rematch? Are they going to say rematch?
Listen,
assuming that Khabib keeps the belt and everything works out and he gets the belt, are they going to have a rematch and make it the biggest fight of all time again? I don't know.
I don't know if
What
there's
do we
space for
want?
that. And I don't think Khabib's actions were in
For that.
pursuance of building up the rematch. I don't know, and nobody will ever know. Dana opted not to put the belt on Khabib in the octagon. Joe Rogan called it one of the craziest things he's ever seen in all his years of calling MMA fights. And you hear Dana say to Khabib, if I put this belt on you, everyone's gonna throw their, I think, expletive into the octagon right now, and we don't want that, so I'm not gonna put it on you. So Khabib walks out without the belt put on, and just how sad that really the biggest fight of his life, the biggest moment of his life was ruined by the emotion of the situation. And really, it's you know, it's tough, you know, it's tough. What this shows is Khabib clearly took more personally the build up to this fight than just build up to a fight. Clearly it was deeper scarring and he carried it and he really meant everything he said up until this fight. And he was all in a sense that even exceeds what is expected and what is hoped for from most mixed martial arts fighters.
I'm actually very happy that Dana didn't put the belt on him, saying that he felt that energy from the crowd, that the crowd would not have it.
Accept it.
Which is kind of cool because the people choosing who the champion is, there's something to be said there, right? Because we're fighting to entertain.
That's true.
And there's a responsibility when you step in the octagon, right? You have people, the eyes are on you. And you have everyone's eyes on you, and it's a moment for you to decide whether you're gonna, you know, you're gonna push for good or you're gonna push for, you know, the negative.
Well, and here's the irony of all of this. On the 25th anniversary of the UFC, and for those who have not seen the early UFCs, probably half of the fans in that audience and half of the viewers around the world have never seen UFC 1. If you're one of them, you have to go watch it. UFC 1 helped to be developed by our family. The objective was very simple. Put a real fight, not a sport, a real fight
no gloves.
on television. No gloves, no time limits, no weight classes, little to no rules. And if you broke the rule, they wouldn't even stop the fight. They would just say, hey, you're going to get fined, but you can strike in the groin, you can eye gouge, do whatever you want, but you're going to get fined. You wouldn't even be disqualified. That's how savage the early UFCs were. It was a real fight on television with the objective being to kind of settle the dust in terms of what martial art is most effective compared to all the rest. So how ironic that 25 years later, on the 25th anniversary, which will be next month, November 12th, 2018, back to November 12th, 1993, on the 25th anniversary, the fight that here is really, you know, kind of built up to celebrate the 25 years, there was less sportsmanship and less honor prior, during, and after the fight than the very first UFC fights, UFC 1. And UFC 1 wasn't even a sport. It was not a sanctioned sport. It was a real fight that just happened to be televised. And there was more sportsmanship and honor in a real fight than there is sportsmanship and honor in a sportive fight that is a sanctioned sport that the world is allowed to watch and support and be entertained by. How ironic that that's where we end up after 25 years.
And let's think about how this is even possible. You know, looking at the fighters today, there's no doubt that there are fighters today that are martial artists, that they represent an art and they're very disciplined in one art, and then they cross-train into others to be prepared for the UFC. But, you know, back in the day, there was multiple different styles of martial arts in the octagon, and they all fought to see who the better art was. And like as you saw, many of you saw, jiu-jitsu prevailed. But today, it's kind of fallen away from the martial arts, and it's become this mix. So they're losing the other half of the art. Jiu-jitsu is an art of self-defense. But beyond that, there's a way to be jiu-jitsu when you're not even fighting, just a way of living.
Interesting.
With honor and integrity and just respect and care for people. And these are the things that are a little bit being lost, you know, in MMA today. It's becoming a show and it's about entertainment, which, don't get me wrong, being entertained is not a problem, and performing is great. But that's why there's more respect on UFC 1 than this fight today. But back again, UFC fights 2, 3, 4 fights ago, amazing respect.
Yes.
So many fighters.
We're not saying that there's a complete absence of respect today. We're just saying that how ironic that this fight, the pinnacle, the biggest fight in UFC history, is absent of the values that, like Hidon pointed out, all the martial artists. It doesn't matter if they got choked out in 30 seconds in UFC 1. They still came as a martial artist by and large, right? And what this is a result of, interestingly enough, is the fact that martial arts, when practiced with tradition and the values and the honor and the respect and the generations that so many martial arts were practiced back then, we continue to practice it today with those same values. And many people around the world do as well in jiu-jitsu and in other traditional martial arts. So many of those values, when you take a sport like MMA, you take little bits from every art, you blend it all together, and you have a sport now that is as much a sport as football or soccer or baseball, right? There's no traditional culture of integrity and values and honor and respect in American football. It doesn't exist. It's a sport. It's there to make money. It's there to entertain. It's there to compete. It's played by a very specific set of rules. So sportifying, essentially, for martial arts, being sportified in this way, where they're all blend together, and now, you know, anyone can learn MMA on any street corner in the country. It's just a reality that we have a greater deficiency of entities teaching the arts that have those values as their core operating system.
The thing is this, you know, when it comes to this competitive sport, who has time for the values?
It's true.
Right? To spend time learning and talking about these values is time wasted, because everybody's in it for themselves.
And for the money and for the victory, that's right.
Correct. They're fighting for themselves, whereas martial artists do the martial arts for life. This is something you're gonna do forever. And I think about my grandfather, you know, who always fought, and he always said, I'm not a fighter. I'm a martial artist that's willing to fight to prove the effectiveness of what I believe in, to defend what I believe in. And that's
a great
point.
That's huge. And now that you're
I'm
saying
not a fighter, and my grandfather fought
and I always
people.
wondered why he said that so enthusiastically. I'm not a fighter. I'm a martial artist. I'm a self-defense instructor who fights to prove what I believe in. Now that you're saying this, I don't know if this is what he meant when he would say that so enthusiastically to his followers and his students and his people watching around the world. But his determination and his desire to detach himself from the label of being a fighter, maybe subliminally and without even knowing it, was because the association of being a fighter is someone who is talented, goes in there, cracks skulls for, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes to get paid and get out. I don't think he put himself on that low level of an existence. He felt himself at a much higher values, higher importance and significance in society. And as a teacher who teaches these values we're talking about, he saw himself in a much higher role, even though that role might not have got him as much money or as many eyeballs as what a fighter, a prize fighter might get. He honored and cherished that role and that responsibility greater than that role of being a fighter.
Yes, and looking at, looking forward, right? I think about all the children in the world, all the people, because obviously the adults that are doing the martial arts and MMA is one thing, but just thinking about the future and adults that are watching MMA. When you watch MMA, you get excited and you think, you know what? I want my child to fight MMA, and you start training your child in MMA.
Like a parent who teaches a kid for football.
Yes. And I can see how you want to live through your child, right? And you want to do that for your child and for yourself. But I feel like what children need, now, of course, I am a martial artist, so I'm biased in that way, but children need is the martial arts. Children don't need MMA. Now, maybe at a certain age, at 18, 21, fine, mixed with MMA. But you choose whether it's jiu-jitsu or karate or taekwondo. Choose a martial art. I think it's a much greater investment in any parent for their child than to say, I'm gonna put them in MMA classes. Because out of all the children whose parents want them to fight MMA, what percentage are gonna be fighting MMA at the professional level?
Right.
2%,
Less.
1%. But the other 98, 99% will benefit from the martial arts. And this is so important. And I see these two fighters, right, who have this spotlight, and there's no martial arts. I'm sorry, Conor, there's no martial arts leading up to the fight.
Right.
But he's also playing the game. He's promoting the event, and I understand that. But even still, he's crossed the line in many ways. So these two fighters, even Conor McGregor, who lost, has displayed has done many things to where I'm like, wow, you're so powerful. Everybody's looking at you, all these kids, and yet you choose not to bring the martial artist out. Do you have it? Does Conor have the martial artist? I believe so.
He does.
Does Khabib have it?
Yes.
I believe so, but where is it at? It's lost. So maybe it's not, maybe they don't truly have it. I don't know.
Who knows? And besides the absolute irony of this happening, like we said, 25 years later, one other thing is pretty ironic in that the display of, forget the antics now, talk about purely the technical display that we saw. What we saw is essentially a re-embodiment of the very first UFC. You have the master striker against the master grappler in an equation for a fight to see what's gonna happen. And many people believe this was gonna happen. No one has any certainty, but how interesting. And let's just be clear. The master striker in Conor McGregor is by no means an amateur grappler. Very proficient jiu-jitsu, very proficient wrestler.
He did some good stuff.
And Khabib is by no means an amateur striker. Actually, the most powerful strike in the fight was landed by Khabib on Conor's chin and almost knocked him out. So neither one of them is an amateur in the other category. However, there is no misunderstanding about what this fight meant. It was the grappler who, if he got a hold of the striker, the fight was over. And it was the striker that if he landed perfectly, the fight was over. And just how interesting that was 25 years later as well. And in the early UFCs, it was undeniable that the grappler would get a hold of the striker, take him down, seal the deal, and Royce did that so beautifully that really literally took martial arts and flipped it on its head. Because up until that point, there was such an obsession with pretty strikes that people thought that's where the Bruce Lee era, they thought that was it. That was martial arts, that was the entirety of it, it was the end-all be-all. Only to find out that no, if we grab a hold of you, take you down, put you at a distance and a position of disadvantage and no leverage, it's just a matter of time before you burn out and get submitted. And it happened exactly that way. And if the fights right now were not dictated by 5-minute rounds, where each round would start Conor back on his feet, it probably would have never went back to its feet. To the first takedown, it would have probably stayed down. And it's just something to observe. And it was just purely, again, a fascinating display to watch, even this late in the game. Here's what this all proves. That even after 25 years, one thing remains true. Statistically, the master grappler has a higher chance of success against the master striker than the other way around. Because all the grappler has to do is grab you. But what the striker has to do is strike you with laser precision on the perfect spot and drop you. If they fail to accomplish that, you are gonna get taken to the ground and you're gonna pay for the missed strikes, as happened in this fight. And if that equation is true, you wanna be on the grabbing side of that equation every single time. The embodiment of that reality was just remarkable to watch. After that being the truth from day one, UFC 1, it's still true. And just something to observe. So
basically what you just said is that you have to choose between a striking art or a grappling art for your children. Choose the grappling art.
Well, and even for
anybody.
Well, even for an adult watching this show, because
anybody.
Here's the thing: Conor is an absolute specimen of precision, speed, and power. If you don't have his strength, speed, and power to be effective with the art that he embodies, is less likely. It's harder to become proficient at what Conor does than it is to become proficient at what Khabib or any master grappler does.
I agree with you in the sense that you should choose the grappling school because of the effectiveness of it over the striking and the likelihood of learning it and difficulty of perfecting the standing arts. But even more than that is look for a school that has a culture that you want to be a part of. Look for a school that has good leaders and role models. And that might even mean that the school might not be the jiu-jitsu school. It might have to be the striking school. There could be a stand-up traditional martial arts school that is a better place for you to be at and for your children to grow up in than a jiu-jitsu school, which is unfortunate, which we don't want that. We want jiu-jitsu schools to be the best that they can be and bring more than just arm locks and chokes.
I agree.
But do your homework and don't send someone, a child, to spend 2, 10, 20 years at a jiu-jitsu school that is not teaching
the values,
the complete art, the values.
100% I agree. The only thing more important than effectiveness is the honor and the respect and the life value that martial arts can bring if you have the right mentors and the right instructors. You guys, it was a necessary discussion. A lot revealed tonight. Unfortunately, like we said, Conor lost the fight, Khabib lost the night, UFC lost something, and the fans lost respect for the engagement that I think they wanted to give Khabib all the respect they could and the fighters all the respect they could, but with what happened after, it made it very difficult. And again, in the heat of emotion, it's hard to, determine how anyone acts, right? And nobody really knows how anyone's gonna act until after the fact. And unfortunately, the emotion got the better of Khabib in his, like I said, the most important night of his life. It's unfortunate because we do believe that in there is, and in Conor as well, there is the martial artist. But the hype around the fight sometimes gets the better of them.
I feel like lots of people lost, but we won in having this opportunity to speak this message and share this message with you guys.
And if you agree, please share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. It's 12:40 right now. We have to go home and go to sleep. We have kids, and we have to wake up tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. because our wives need to sleep in. So much respect, and we'll see you guys on the next one. We're coming to Toronto. I'll be in New York for a seminar at the end of this month, October, and then in Toronto, we're doing 2 seminars on December 7th and 8th, right there when we're there for Brian's title fight against Max Holloway. We'll see you there. Much respect.